Hi everyone, this is a market recap for Thursday, August 20th. The market continues to act fairly poorly, at least from the lens of a momentum and AI space. Things that are moving are materials and crypto, healthcare, biotechs, although healthcare and biotech certainly had a bit of a pullback today. But the SPY, the Qs really aren't looking super hot right now. How low these will go, who knows? But there certainly isn't much opportunity as far as momentum stocks go right now. Even the stocks that you think will that like have the potential to kind of carry the market or go higher and maybe bring back the momentum stocks back into play are failing. You have an NBIS, it goes up a huge amount on earnings, and then I think it's fine if we keep this low and we continue sideways and build out a base. But nope, we continue and now we're back below the 50-day. The photonic stocks, same deal. We had the potential breakout here, false breakout. The semiconductors in general are just failing back below their 50 with a couple exceptions. You have MU, which had honestly a fairly decent entry today. Again, not a stock that I would trade in this environment. But if we were seeing money flowing into these stocks, this is a fairly clean level to buy right back over the 50-day. Um, there was, if we look at like an AEHR, this is another bad example. You have the breakout, and then it completely reverses, back below the 20-day. SanDisk, STX, holding up okay, right, but still falling back into their ranges here. There just really isn't much to do in these stocks right now, and that's fine. I'm not really dying to trade these right now anyway, but I think it speaks to a broader market chop as a whole, which I am finding very irritating. I've mentioned it the last several days, the last week or two, honestly, since the beginning of this follow through day, how difficult it has been to get positioned into some really cleanly trending stocks. I stopped out of MT today. We had the steel names get crushed yesterday off of some Trump tweet or social media post about pausing the 50% tariffs, and these stocks got hammered. And MT actually held in there reasonably well, right? This was when the tweet was announced, I believe, and it pulled back, and then it kind of reacted the inversely, and it kind of reacted inversely, right? It rebounded and closed at highs, and to me, that gave me a huge amount of confidence, and I was very prepared for this thing to go higher. But as you can see, an atrocious, 6.5% gap down overnight. Once I saw that, I'm like, you know what, I'm not going to hold this based on what we saw in the other stocks. So I cut it, watch us finally bounce here, but, there's nothing I can do about it. Sucks, but I was pretty prepared for this thing to go higher. I'm cutting it for a very small winner. Um, I this is a tricky environment for me just as a trader in general because everybody has their own styles of trading, and I personally do not like trimming very much into strength. Like that's it, you can consider it a weakness. I don't really know if I don't know if I'd really consider it that. It's just kind of different. In some trending environments it can work really well. But in choppy environments like this, you have to be quick to trim into these extensions, just like Dell, just like HPE, right? You have to be quick. If you're buying it here and you get a 16% extension, you need to be trimming some on the close of this day here, or even just into strength. And the same even could go for an Eli Lilly, right? I'm in it from here, and it's up 9%. I just don't like trimming like so soon, right? To me, it just feels so soon to be trimming into stocks like this. But at the end of the day, that's just the environment that we're in. And it's certainly causing me some trouble. I like to hold as much of my position for the biggest portion of the move possible. Um, and that's just what you get. An exception, well, not really an exception. I did trim some ETHU today. We got a really nice gap up Ethereum, Bitcoin, right? They're all up a ton. Ethereum's running right into its 200 simple moving average. The If I go to Ethereum futures, right, we're still over it right now, which is awesome to see. I really hope we kind of just cruise over the 200. This is like a big line in the sand, in my opinion. And frankly, I kind of see us going into like a range like this. Oops. This to me is probably one of the more important key levels on Ethereum, right? This is just a widely respected level that has been tested so time and time again. So frankly, if we could get a push into here and just consolidate in this area, that would be awesome. That's asking for a lot, right? Ethereum and Bitcoin have both put in pretty substantial moves already off their lows, but that's kind of what I would like to see. But I did trim a fifth of my position into today's strength just to lock some up. As far as sector strength goes, I think the XLB, gold, these are kind of your, the sectors you really want to watch. The materials sector has a really nice base to it. Gold being kind of the main leader of that. I would love to get positioned into some gold, but in not finding it particularly easy. Things are kind of gapping. Things are kind of going really aggressively, not providing much room to get involved. So gold, if you were watching it here, potentially you could have bought the gap up. But again, I would have liked to wash out. And had we gotten a washout, I certainly would have liked to have been involved. The XLE still continues to behave really well. A bit of a pause today, but I mean, again, that's totally reasonable. If we just kind of consolidate in this area here for a little bit, we may eventually get some continuation higher. Um, Oil names have been on quite the tear. I'm still watching DK. Don't like that we made a new lower low here, but this is still in fairly decent structure. And if we can eventually get a breakout with some more consolidation, the XLE, I would like to trade it. UGP tried to break out today. Um, oops. Kind of a weak close. Not really. Didn't love this consolidation here. Would have liked more sideways. If it had the XLE been in a better spot, I would have taken this. But it's kind of similar to a dyno back on this day, right? On the 8th of July. But we didn't get that. The XLE was just not. It was just extended for me to be buying oil up here. Again, biotechs, Moderna saw a big red day today. And this is kind of what I was worried about, right? Especially being in a stock like LLY, is you get this crazy move. It's not uncommon to get a pretty intense gap down or red day the next day. And when you have a move like this, it feels like everybody turns on their algos to just track the price of this, and then the XLV and the XBI, they all trade with that stock. And that's exactly what we're seeing with a stock like LLY, which trades with the stock yesterday by gapping up and breaking out and then selling off all day today. Same with a Merck, right? It's just the same concept. So what to think of Lilly here, I'm not really too sure. I really, really hope we find support here and we can finally get maybe a clean trend on something, because as you know, I am just struggling with it. Not in a drawdown or anything. And I really haven't been in a drawdown at any point in this, really even since the market corrected initially in this area. But I just can't gain any traction or very little traction to the long side and really move my portfolio in a meaningful way. I've taken tons of losers over these last month or two. Thankfully, I've been in stocks that have kept me afloat, but it's certainly an irritating environment. Again, there's not really anything that I'm watching to get involved with. Coal has sort of been pushing a little bit. Actually, there's one stock that I like to set up. I really like Toast here. I think this looks pretty good. If we could get a pullback into whatever level that is, like 3450 area tomorrow and we kind of close like we did on the 18th, I would love to get involved. Otherwise, I think Toast looks pretty good over this level, right? This is a pretty classic, um, right side of the V, like Lance Breitstein type of setup. You get this kind of pullback, and then you start reclaiming, and you kind of set up this level here. And I would certainly like to take a trade on Toast, um, especially if we're seeing more money potentially flow back into some of the food stocks like a Brinker International, which did bounce today, a Cheesecake Factory, which did bounce today, a BJ's, which sort of bounced today off the 50-day. But we'll see. But Toast is probably the Toast, DK. These are kind of the only stocks on my watch. And that's about it. Again, rotation out of a lot of the tech stocks as we're seeing in, pretty much everything aside from a select few showing relative strength, like MU, Light, right, still holding their 50 days. This isn't a total washout yet, although this stock just trades fairly choppy in general, at least since the 2nd of April. So yeah, I mean that's about it. Again, not much to do in my opinion. If you're in crypto, that's crypto, gold, and healthcare. That's about it. Um, Beyond that, I just don't see anything. Chinese stocks have been perking up a little bit. They had kind of a bit of a washout day today. Reclaim though, some of them look okay. They're just not really doing a whole lot. Definitely not on my immediate watch. Um, Aerospace names again, these did look like decent for a little bit and then just totally cracked down, right? If we look at a SpaceX, kind of lost its level here, although it's still holding these levels. Perhaps we can still consolidate under this and maybe build out a slightly larger flag and continue higher. But to me, this looks pretty ugly. I'm not really very confident in that. But just a couple last things, we're barely holding the lows of the follow through day here. That's kind of like the thing that you need to do for to be like overly bullish in an environment like this. But as a whole, the market isn't acting very good, and it hasn't been really for a long time, or not a long time, but a little while. You just have to really make sure you're in the right things. But beyond that, that's about all I got. And yeah, thank you for listening.